And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the webinar. My name is Samantha Barnes, and I'm the marketing specialist here at MassMutual Federal Credit Union. Joining us today, we have Suzanne Wilkins, and she's here to talk to you about the college planning process and how to afford it. Thank you and welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you very much, Samantha. Appreciate being here today and thanking you for your time. Let's jump in. We have a lot to talk about today. And the primary focus is why college and how can we afford it, right? So we know that those attending college from high school that get their degree, their four-year degree, generally earn more over their career than someone with just a high school diploma, right? So usually we're seeing that they earn about $1 million more over their career. So where do we begin on this journey? Well, the first stepping stone is choosing that college. Where do you go? Now, most of you on the call probably have seniors that have already decided which college, or they're still deciding colleges. So I think that it's really important to remember a couple of different things. One, you're building a four-year budget, and two, college and what comes with it is a business. We've got to treat it like a business transaction. And we've got to do our due diligence before we make these choices on what college or what university we're going to. So how do you do that with everything that you're facing in day-to-day life, right? There are a lot of really good tools out there, but you want to find a tool that answers these basic questions for you, right? The university's accreditation, the job placement rate's very important, graduation statistics, and even checking the Better Business Bureau, right? Like I said before, this is a business and we're paying a lot of money to have your students go to school. You want to make sure that you are satisfied with the education that they are receiving. So where do you go to find that? Like I said before, there are many tools on the internet, but I like this tool the best. It's found at nces.ed.gov/college navigator. And it tells you a wealth of information about the colleges that you're interested in, or if you're attending. I think it's a good exercise to use this tool because not only does it give you all the answers on the previous slide that we talked about real quickly, but you can also, find the college that's right for you. Is it public? Is it private? Is it a 2-year? Is it a 4-year? Is it accredited? What type of degree will you get? One of the things that I like about this is just to back up real quick. I have 2 daughters that have been through the college system. They both have earned their degrees, and that part of my life is, far away from me, but now I'm helping, my nephew navigate this, right? So one of the things as a parent I was worried about is sending my daughters to New York and Washington, D.C. For an example, that's where they went to school. This would tell you the safety rates on there. So that's important. It's also important to understand the teacher to student ratio, right? When we're sitting down to compare colleges, does my student thrive in a smaller setting where there's maybe one professor to 30, 35 students? Or do they not mind being in a larger university where there's one professor to 200 students in a class? So this would tell you all of those answers. Now, the best thing that I like about this tool is that it does help you build that 4 or 5-year budget. And the way it does it is giving you information on how much it would cost. So this slide I'm showing you, I just picked Springfield College. That's probably one of the closest colleges that you have to your credit union. And it shows you each of the expense line items and what you should be expecting to pay year over year. And usually there's an increase year over year. Unfortunately, that's the name of the game, right? But it will enable you to really put down really good numbers for the next 4 or 5 years so that there are no surprises, right? The only thing that I would caution you about using this tool is that if you go to a private school versus a public school, I had, like I said before, I had my daughters apply to three public schools and one private school just to see what we would get back, thinking that they would never be able to afford going to a private school. And it turns out that the financial aid packages were better because their pockets are deeper because of the alumni. The private schools depend on the alumni giving them income, whereas the public schools depend on the Department of Education, the government, right? So one of the things that I would caution you if you do have a private school on your list is how much does the tuition change year over year, right? The financial aid packages could be really good, but do they increase tuition and rates significantly year over year? So this is going to help you sort of figure that out. Another thing that it will also gauge for you is the type of aid that the school grants. Now, this is important, right? When you look at the school, if they're telling you that they have a robust financial aid package that they give out every year, that's wonderful. But what type of aid do they give? Because don't forget, aid is considered scholarships and grants, but also student loans. So if the majority of their aid is given out in student loans and not federal grants or Pell grants or scholarships or anything like that, you have to take that into consideration too. So just be aware of those numbers. Now, scholarship is a big topic right now. 'Tis the season for scholarships. And there are two different types of scholarships that I like to talk about. One without the FAFSA form, and we're going to get to the FAFSA form in a minute, and one with the FAFSA form. So the FAFSA form is a free application for federal student aid that needs to be completed if you want to be considered for federal aid. Okay, so again, we'll talk about that FAFSA form in a few minutes because there's a lot of questions around that this year. But let's talk a little bit about scholarships without the FAFSA. These are the ones that are outside the boundaries. You can think of them as maybe religious or civic affiliations. One thing that comes to mind is Rotary. They give out scholarships. So those are scholarships without the FAFSA. So it's usually based on need or merit. It is issued out and awarded on a variety of reasons, and the award amounts can vary. Okay, so I see them all the time. I'm part of a committee, a scholarship committee, you can, some of them, as long as you're a member of the credit union, you can apply. Member of the Rotary Club or your parents, part of the Rotary Club, you can apply. So again, a variety of different reasons. Let's say you write with your left hand or you have brown eyes. I mean, again, a variety of different reasons. Now, when you're looking at that award, you have to understand if it's a one-time payout or is it over for a course of 4 or 5 years. So that's one question that I would ask. Another thing to be aware of is how the school takes in that scholarship money, that the scholarships that I just mentioned. Do they take it away from the financial aid package that they're giving out, or do they not? I mean, that's a big factor. My oldest daughter spent a lot of time searching for scholarships, and she got a really good amount of money, about $5,000 in what I call private scholarships. And when she went to account for them with her school, they took that away from her financial aid package. So she wasn't too happy about that. But that was a few years ago. Things have changed in the landscape right now as we're clearing out through COVID. campuses are getting very aggressive with how they, advertise and how they bring in enrollment. So it's very competitive. So I would speak to a financial aid officer of the college that your student is thinking about going to see how they take those scholarships into account. Now, there are many resources for scholarships. I've put some really good website names up here for you to check them out. The FastWeb, College Board, FinAid, Raise Me Money, they're all good resources and reputable. Some are not so reputable, so if you have to pay to use them, I would stay away. Free money is free money. You should never have to fork over a fee to participate in a scholarship application. Now, we understand that a lot of high school guidance counselors are good resources for scholarships, so I don't rule them out, but the internet is really a good place to start looking for scholarships. And I just put this up on the slide showing you what a common search could be. So if my major is teaching, I would search for teaching, then I would use the association word, the actual word association, and then scholarship. And you should get a listing of all of these scholarships for teaching. They're going to show you the large dollar amounts first, and then they're going to whittle it down to the smallest dollar amount. Now, I don't want you to exclude those small dollar amounts because generally those smaller dollar amounts are easier to get, whereas the larger dollar amounts are on a national scale. So just keep that in mind. Every little bit helps. And I consider searching for scholarships like a part-time job. So I would say juniors who are at the end of their junior year going to summer vacation, they should start using the summer vacation months to start looking for scholarships and never stop until they graduate from college. A lot of times students stop looking for scholarships at the end of their high school careers. I would encourage them to do that, to never stop looking for scholarships. Now, most parents ask me how much time should they put in and how much money would they get? And I really can't answer that, but I can only share with you my story with my daughters. I required them to look at least an hour to an hour and a half every week during the summer months. And to start building their scholarship list. And like I said before, my oldest one got $5,000 out of it. My youngest one, that is a story that I'm going to tell you in a few minutes. She didn't do as well as her sister. This is another way to search for scholarships. You put in your county's name. I live in the county of Stratford. Then you add the word foundation and then scholarships. That's another good way of looking for scholarships as well. Now, Mass Mutual has a scholarship program. They have closed their scholarship program, and they're going to determine who gets awarded on May 1st. But I wanted to still put this on your radar for next year and the subsequent years, right? So make sure that you bookmark this email address, this URL, and maybe your chances will be great next year of winning something, because your credit union has a very robust scholarship program. 10 awards of $2,000 and 8 awards of $2,000. That's a lot of money. So definitely check that out. Some more scholarship tips. Get in the money-making mindset. Like I said before, treat it like a part-time job. All those small scholarships do add up, and it's easy to get. Once you get an essay or two under your belt that's written, you sort of can use those same or similar essays to tag on to your scholarship applications. Now, it is getting a little bit more competitive in this area with the introduction of AI. So scholarship committee members are getting a little bit more creative in what they ask for scholarships. So they might ask for a PowerPoint or a video, but just be aware that the qualifications for scholarships will probably change the more and more use of AI in the future. So we want to help you build your scholarship list. So how do you do that? Again, all of the things that I've told you just recently, your high school guidance counselor can help, the internet can help, but any awards nights that you go to or, scholarship events, I would keep those brochures because that can help build a scholarship list too, right? So also when you're approaching scholarships, make sure you follow all instructions. So if they're asking you to fill out the application in red crayon, that's what you should be doing. If they're asking you to paper clip it instead of stapling it, make sure you do that too, because this is their way of vetting people out very quickly. Some of these scholarship committee members are dealing with a lot of applications. And this is just one of those quick ways to just throw out applications if they're not following instructions. Now, I used to know of a scholarship out there. I don't think they have it anymore, but it was a $10,000 scholarship, which is a significant amount, but they had 30 pages of instructions. So again, I can imagine your typical student would say, "Are you kidding me? 30 pages of instructions? I'm not doing this." And I can totally understand that. But in the real world, in the job market, if my boss comes to me and asks me to fill out a report that's 30 pages long, that's what I do. I do that to get my paycheck. So it's all in perspective how you look at scholarships. If there is an essay requirement, make sure that you take the time, energy, and effort to have someone read through it, a parent, a guidance counselor, an English teacher, just to make sure that there's no mistakes in it so that your committee members don't throw it out. Make sure you also include a job history. Now, this is really important, especially, those part-time students. For me as a committee member, when I see that on an application, then I automatically understand that they might not be able to participate in extracurricular activities at high school, like the students that don't have any jobs, right? So I do keep that in the back of my mind when I'm looking at an application. Reference letters. If they're asking for reference letters, this is obviously usually a favorite teacher. If the student is employed, maybe an employer that can do this. All I ask is that the student, when asking for a reference letter, understands the workload of that person that usually writes the reference letters, because more than likely it's going to be a favorite teacher, and favorite teachers have a lot of these reference letters to write. So make sure that your student has a student resume that lists all achievements from day 1 of grade 9 through the last day or up to today. And make sure that they hand that to the person that's writing the reference letter so that that person can concentrate on just their character and not having to worry if they're on the math team or on the football team, whatever it is. It would be a lot easier for that person to write a reference letter. And of course, highlight any community involvement that you may have. Just to wrap up the tips, make sure you are careful about scholarships involving any luck, like drawings, okay? These are usually entities that just want to collect your information in order to sell you something. So just be careful of that. Any type of sweepstake or lottery type feel to it, it could be a scam, or they're trying to get money or your information to sell you things. If it's a very easily completed application, be careful of that, like where just fill out your name and address and your major. That's an example of an easy application. Just be careful of those as well. And those that don't have an essay, again, there are some out there that are reputable, but just make sure that you don't give too much of your information away under those scenarios. Now, the worthwhile scholarships are going to require some effort, and there's usually a competitive element to it, and it has multiple sections. So just be aware of those things when you approach scholarships. Then finally, I'm not going to really read all of these tiles out to you, but I do want to share a story with you. And I always share this story to everyone that will listen because it is a true story. My boss is also on a lot of scholarship committee functions, and there was one time where she was involved with a scholarship that was giving out $40,000, which is a lot of money. And this young person won the scholarship. And it was a big media event around this scholarship. And the young man went to each of the committee members, thanking them for the award. But he wanted to know what won him the scholarship because he wanted to duplicate his efforts in the future to get more scholarships. Was it his GPA? What was his, maybe it was his involvement in school. What was it? And what they said to him blew me away. They said he was the only one that applied. Now, that again, so I go back to my girls, and I'm going to tell you now a short story about my youngest daughter, who didn't get much in those private scholarships because every time I would come home from work, I would ask her, did she look for scholarships? She said, yes, but I don't qualify. And it really struck me that, your typical 17-year-old, your 18-year-old, depending on their confidence level, might look at those scholarship applications and think that they don't qualify. So I would encourage everyone that's on this call to encourage your student to apply to as many. I don't care what the criteria is. You never know. And again, treat it like a job. So let's move into the cost of education. There is a lot here to unpack, and I don't mean to scare anyone. I just mean to educate you, especially on this slide. I share it every year. And for conversation purposes, I'm going to pull out the second bar graph and the fourth bar graph. The second is the public 4-year in-state on-campus experience. And the fourth is a private, not-for-profit 4-year on-campus experience. So you can see they come in at 28,000 to 58,000 roughly a year. That's nationwide. We live in the Northeast. And what it really looks like for us in the Northeast is anywhere between 35 to 37,000 for the public schools. And the private schools can be anywhere between, oh gosh, now I've seen them as low as 68,000, as high as 89,000, unfortunately. So we're dealing with a lot of money here, but the point of this slide is to show you that the cost of attendance breaks down into sections: tuition and fees, room and board, books and supplies, transportation, and other expenses. So the tuition and fees, they remain the same. I mean, they remain in stone. There's nothing that you can do to change those numbers year over year, right? That's what you're going to pay. But anything beyond that dark blue area, those are what we call flexible costs. So it's those small decisions over the 4 years that will save you really a lot of money depending on the choices that you make. Okay, so we're going to talk about the choices in a minute. So how does this all begin? Where do you begin, right? Once someone has applied and has received acceptance, we fill out that FAFSA form, right? So you complete the FAFSA form. It's usually completed. It's usually available October 1st of every year, but this year was a little bit wonky in the fact that they've rewritten a lot of regulations around the FAFSA. So all the FAFSA forms were available starting in January. So you complete the FAFSA form. Usually within 7 to 10 days, you would get a student aid report. Now that gets sent directly to the student with their email. It does not get sent to the parent, okay? Now that student aid report with all the regulation and the changes, it's called a student aid index, okay, an SAI instead of a student aid report. Now it's a student aid index. Once you get that in a perfect world within 7 to 10 days, then the same information that's sent to the student is sent to the school on an ISA report, an institutional student information record, just showing demographics, finances on the student and the parent or the guardian. And then you should get a financial aid package. Okay, so that's what it's supposed to look like. This year, because of all the changes to the FAFSA form, and by the way, the FAFSA form has been shortened from like 108 questions down to, I think it's around 36 questions. But because of all these changes and all the different calculations behind the changes, we have had a few bumps in the road. So people were filling out their FAFSA forms in January, and then the Department of Education says, oh, we got to put the brakes on it. We're not going to give you a student aid index because we've got to recalculate what we said we should do because, there's some confusion there. So we're going to put this on hold. Okay. So they put it on hold to what we thought would be March 15th. And usually, I can't even say most students got their student aid index on March 15th because most of them probably didn't. But when March 15th came, or approximately around that time, the Department of Education said, okay, we're going to send out the student aid reports now, but we sort of messed up on about 200,000 to 400,000 of them. So now we've got to fix those. And then they also said anyone that filled out a FAFSA form and needs to change any information now has to wait until April to change it. So there's been a lot of kicking the can down the road. All this to say that if you have any questions about where your financial aid package is, it's very critical, especially this year, to talk to your financial aid officer of the college that your student is attending. They will be able to answer your questions and allay any fears that you might have of not having information or not being able to upload your FAFSA form. So this is what the site looks like, just in case most of you are probably already familiar with that. Always go to studentaid.gov. This is the best site. Make sure you bookmark it because it's the site that I even go to in my job. I go for everything on the federal student loan side. I go to studentaid.gov. We've already talked about this. You can do usually the forms open up October 1st of every year. I don't think they're going to change it for this year. So expect it October 1st. But again, keep your eye open on studentaid.gov. You obviously apply for FAFSA online, but you can do it through the paper. I think you can do it through paper. They might have changed it, but if you do that, you're going to wait even longer. So I would do it online. And please beware of scams. There are people that say they can charge you a certain amount of money to complete the FAFSA form. Make sure you do it on your own. It is so easy. And if you have a question that you're not familiar with or you don't understand one of the questions or you have special circumstances, there's 800 numbers, or you can take advantage of the chat feature that FAFSA has. So once you complete your FAFSA, it opens up doors to scholarships and grants, federal work-study programs, federal direct loans, institutional programs that the schools themselves can give in a form of their own student loan, and direct plus loan for parents. So once you do that, you have your financial aid package. How do you determine what you need? So your financial aid package should show you all of the line items or expenses for the cost of attendance. So what you're looking for is actually the net cost. So the cost of attendance minus any grants or scholarships that your student receives. Then you also subtract any savings that you're going to put towards those school costs. That's what we call the net cost. Okay. So in this scenario on this slide, The upper third of this slide shows the estimated cost for tuition and fees, housing and meals, books and supplies, transportation, personal expenses, and what the estimated total cost of attendance is. I broke it down from fall to spring, but you might see the award letter as a total academic year. Every award letter is different from school to school. There's no formal regulations, even though the Department of Education set out a white paper on how to write it. Only a third of our schools in this country follow it. The other 2/3 make up their own template, and it can be confusing sometimes, right? So I just wanted to take you through it. So in this case, the total academic year is $28,196. Okay. Now they're going to give you a financial aid package. Let's say they give you a merit scholarship totaling almost $7,000. This person received a teaching grant, which is $4,000. And so the total of that free money is $10,000. So you subtract the $10,998 from the 28 to get that $17,198, that estimated net cost. Okay. Now, once you have that, they're also going to give you money, quote unquote money, in terms of loans, whether they're direct, subsidized, or unsubsidized. You're going to see it there. And then they're going to subtract that loan from this total. So showing you a total cost of attendance of $11,754. Now, this is where a lot of your students will get confused. They'll see this number here and think that that's all they'll have to pay, when in reality, they're actually paying this number plus those student loans, right? So another thing that you have to be aware of is this grant. Any type of grant money comes with stipulations, right? So the teaching grant, the one that comes to mind frequently is that $4,000 teaching grant. Let's say your student goes in as a teaching major, and in year 2, they decide they don't want to be a teaching major, they want to be an accountant. That grant will be turned into a student loan. Okay, so just make sure you understand what the stipulations are for grant money. If it does not outline it on the award letter, talk to your financial aid officer, and they'll let you know what the stipulations are. And just make sure of this tuition and fee category. I've seen some award letters where they only list tuition and fees at, let's say, the $11,000, and they don't account for this all these other expenses, and then you get a bill for the total amount. So that's a little bit unnerving when I see that. I've only seen that once before, and maybe hopefully more universities are more transparent in that. But just be careful of your award letter, and if you have any questions, again, talk to your financial aid officer. They'll be able to clear anything up for you. So again, how much do you really need? We talked about those fixed costs, but let's talk a little bit about I'm going to be talking about a little bit about flexible costs on the next slide. But I want you to know that the award letters are never written in stone. It is what it is, and that's what you have to pay. Because don't forget, when an award letter is put together, they're pulling information from the FAFSA form of tax returns of 2 years ago. So a lot can happen in someone's life in 2 years. Just look what happened during COVID, right? Some people have lost their jobs, laid off from their jobs. It could be a divorce. It could be a death. It could be escalating debt for bankruptcy that could affect your financial aid package. If you've had those events in your life, I would talk to the financial aid officer and let them know what you've gone through. And it doesn't even have to be as catastrophic as that. It could be, look, I take care of my mom. I have a high school student that goes to private school, and I have this student that's going to college. This is my financial burden. Can you help me? You always can ask for help, additional help. Now, The best time to ask for more money is probably, I would say, the first and second week of June after you received your financial aid package. Now, with all these delays, I'm hoping that it's still June, the first 2 weeks of June. It could be the third and fourth week of June with all these delays on the FAFSA form, but think about it. Most students have to make a decision on where they need to go for school by May 1st. So once that May 1st deadline is passed, then universities know what their student roster is going to be. So if they sent up 500 packages and only 250 come back, they're sitting on 250 financial packages, right? Not doing anything. So they do have some extra money to play around with. So you might want to go to them and ask them for additional money. And of course, it's in all how you ask, right? You can show your students determination in going there and their exuberance for going there. What did they do? Did they go and have student visits? Have they been on campus? Have they reached out several times with different questions? That really demonstrates interest in the school. So you might want to point that out. So make sure you go through that again. Make sure you go through appeals and make sure you ask for more money. Now, finally, there's also something called a tuition payment plan. So it takes that unmet need, right? So let's say you go to school, this school costs 30 and you get $15,000 in scholarships. So you have an unmet need of $15,000 that you actually have to pay for. Well, you can put that tuition payment plan, you can put that unmet need on a tuition payment plan. And they're usually for 10 months, and you have to go through the bursar's office of the school, and there's usually a fee for that. So you're probably saying right now, Suzanne, I can't afford paying, putting $15,000 on a payment plan for 10 months. It just doesn't make sense for me economically. And I understand that, but maybe what you could do is put $1,000 of that unmet need on a payment plan. That's only $100 a month, $50 paid by the student, $50 paid by the parent. So that's $1,000. You multiply that by 4 years, that's $4,000 that you don't have to write into a student loan. So it just gives you different options in doing that. So let's talk a little bit more about those flexible costs. Again, this is just an example, and it's based on 10 months of being at school. So we're going to talk about room and board, which is the rent, food, books, personal expenses, and transportation. I'm going to keep personal expenses on the list for last. So let's talk a little bit about rent, room and board. So the first year students that go on campus really have their hands tied because a lot of universities are asking students to attend on campus for either the first or the second year. They don't have an option, but the third and fourth year they do. That third and fourth year, they can have an option of living off campus, which would probably reduce the amount of that room and board, or they can live with parents if they're close enough to eliminate that room and board, which is a really bulk of that expense report that you've seen earlier. So just keep that in mind. If they are an RA, they could probably save money in year 2, 3, and 4 by being an RA. Again, living off campus would also save you money, or living with parents. Now, food. The incoming freshman, again, has their hands tied in the fact that they will get cafeteria plan A, which is the Cadillac of food choices, right? It could feed probably 1.5 to 2 people. So you really can't do anything in that first year, but in year 2, 3, and 4, you'll be able to get cafeteria plan A, B, C, D, D being rice, beans, noodles, whatever. Nothing is extravagant, but I have had students come back to me saying that one of the ways that they could get their money back on that unused food credit is by selling it to someone that does need the food, maybe an athlete on the team or someone basically eats more than you do. So you might be able to do that. If you do have a credit, talk to the school and see if you can apply it to your cost of attendance. Some do, some don't. Books, they're very high costs. Actually, I should change this slide. The average book now is up to $300 to $350 if you purchase it new through the university. Now, there are options where you can buy used books. I encourage you to go to your professor before you do, or you could rent books, or you could download books on an iPad, which would be a lot less. So those are the ways that I would look at the book expense. Another way also, and especially for freshmen, if they go to their professor that first week, usually the professor, what I've seen happen is the professor said, yes, this is our book list, but I'm only going to use 2 out of the 6 books that we have on our list, so you don't have to buy those 4 other books. So I encourage my nephew not to buy books that first week of school, and it saved him a whole lot of money because most professors did do just that. They said, well, you don't need all of these books. We're only going to look at this book. So just something to keep in mind. Now, transportation, you really can't move the needle on those choices. It is what it is. And unless you go to a school in the city and you have, you bring your bicycle and you can go from point A to point B instead of a bus pass. I don't know. But you really can't move the needle on transportation. Now, personal expenses, I want to emphasize this. I get on my soapbox every time because I see this as a problem in higher ed financing. A lot of times a student will have a credit for certain circumstances, whether that's living off campus and you have a credit so that you can pay your rent on that rental unit off campus, or sometimes you overpay in one category and the school puts it as a credit. And sometimes what the school does is they put it in a student account and they attach it with a debit card or the student's own debit card, right? And that student will see that credit and say, okay, well, my rent is not that much. I could take this money and I can use it. When I go down to the local cafe, I'm going to buy a cup of coffee on my debit card. It's not a big deal. So that $5 cup of coffee is now financed for either 10, 15, 20, 25 years because the source of those funds came from a loan. Most oftentimes it would come from a loan unless you pay out of pocket for your tuition and fees. Most of us can't. So a lot of times students don't realize that those credits that they can use in their accounts, it's tied to a money source, right? So if your student ever has an opportunity where they have a credit, make sure you put it back on your student loans. There's no prepayment penalty fees on any private or federal student loan. It is illegal to have prepayment penalty fees. So make sure they put that money back on the loan. Now, we already talked about that. Your credit union believes in a value-based approach to financial aid. First, they want to make sure that you exhaust all the free money that you can, grants and scholarships that we've talked about. Then they want you to go to the cheap money second, which are federal direct loans. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. And then the third category is the gap. What do you do for that unmet need? Do you tap into a savings plan like a 529 plan? Do you own your own home and do you tap into that? Do you avail yourself of a Parent Plus loan or your private student loans? There's a lot of different paths that you can go down, and I would encourage you to seek a financial advisor if you have all these paths, because I certainly can't tell you which path is best, especially around a savings plan 529. A lot of times people ask me, oh, should I tap into it? When? Should I use it every year? Should I use it all up front? That's not for me to decide. That is above my level. You need really to go to a financial planner. So make sure you do that, because this is a big financial transaction. We talked about scholarships and grants. I wanted to show you what grants look like on the federal side of things. There's the federal Pell Grant, the Iraq and Afghanistan Service Grant, federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, and then the Teaching Grant. All of those can be found on studentaid.gov to give you more details. We really didn't talk about federal work study and what that is. In order to qualify, you have to fill out the FAFSA form, and it's simply a yes or no question. Are you interested in work study? If you say yes, then and if you qualify, it gives you usually a part-time job. Usually it's on campus. It is first come, first serve. So, which is why you should fill out the FAFSA form as soon as it becomes available, because again, the government takes it in and it's first come, first serve for financial aid on the federal side of things. So, but if you do not qualify for federal work study, if you don't see it on your award letter, it's not a big deal. Just make sure you ask your financial aid officer if there are any other job opportunities out there. So just to take a moment, remember we talked about the award letter. You'll see federal work study program of, my youngest daughter, I think got either 1,500 or 2,500. I can't remember what it was. And the first, and it happened to me, the first month of her college year, she called me up and she said, Mom, I can't do a part-time job and maintain good grades. I'm going to have to drop this federal work study program. And I said, sure, not a problem, but that's for your expenses, So what are we going to do to supplement your expenses while you're in college? So we had a conversation. She worked a little bit more during the summer months, but just know that if you see that on your award letter, you're going to see that $2,500 being deducted. And if someone doesn't complete their federal work study program, that goes away. So just make sure that you understand to supplement it somehow with that. Let's talk a little bit about federal direct loans. These are made by the Department of Education. You can only get this if you fill out a FAFSA form. So I encourage you to fill out a FAFSA form. A lot of times I hear parents say, well, they're going to say I make too much money. I'm not going to bother with this, or I probably won't qualify for anything. I still encourage you to fill out the FAFSA form, because you might not get any federal aid, but what happens is the university uses the form to create a financial aid package. So if they don't have any FAFSA form to go by, you might not get any aid. So make sure you fill that out. So these federal direct loans are made only to the student. The parent's name is not on this. They have to be a U.S. citizen or a non-citizen with a valid Social Security number. They have to have graduated from high school with their diploma or their GED, or pass a homeschooling test. They have to be enrolled in a program that's seeking a degree or certificate, and they have to be making satisfactory academic progress, which we call in industry SAP. And every SAP is different for every school. You can find information on the school's website. The reason why this is important is that if SAP starts declining dramatically, then federal student loans can be revoked. Okay, so they might offer you a couple of student loans. They see loans tanking from, your last couple of months in senior high school to your, day one freshman. They might not want to give you those federal direct loans, and as well as private student loans too. But for the direct loan, there are two types of direct loans given only to the student. There's the subsidized and the unsubsidized. So the subsidized is awarded to students based on financial need. The government pays the interest while the student is in school, and the interest rate is fixed at 5.5% plus a loan fee of 1.057 that's taken right off the top of the loan. So that means you have to pay out of pocket for that. The unsubsidized is awarded to all students, and it's not based on need. So the student is responsible but can defer payments until after they get out of school. The interest rate's the same, and the term is the same. It's 10 years with a 6 months grace period, meaning once you graduate or separate from a college, you have 6 months where you don't make payments, but just know that with the unsubsidized loans, the interest is accruing during those 6 months. So loan limits on the direct loans: incoming freshmen, 5,500, sophomores, 6,500, juniors and seniors, 7,500. If you're considered an independent, you get higher limits, and there are qualifications on the independent student. It doesn't mean that if a parent decides not to pay for their student's school, that does not necessarily make them an independent. These are the qualifications for an independent student. Now, there are other options for funding that gap that we're going to talk about is the PLUS loan, the parent loan for undergraduate students. So again, this is made by the Department of Education to the parent only. The student is not on this. And it is credit driven, whereas the direct loan is not. So they'll pull your credit report. If you do not qualify and you're denied this loan, your student automatically qualifies for more financial aid. So the allure of this loan is that the borrowing limit is less the cost of attendance and any financial aid. And the interest rate is fixed at 8.05%, but look at that origination fee. It's over 4%. It is so high that they let you finance that into your loan. There is a 10-year repayment. This can be deferred while the student is in school. So make sure when you're shopping around, take the PLUS loan into consideration when you talk about student loans. We've already talked about the tuition payment plans. Let's talk a little bit about private student loans. So this is not under the Department of Education's umbrella. This private student loan usually is generated by a credit union, a bank, a fintech company, and there are underwriting guidelines because there are a lot higher limit than the direct loans are on the federal government side. So rates can vary by institution, and it can be based mostly on prime. There's usually no origination fees, but they can vary from 0 to 3%. The rate, the term on this is anywhere from 10 to 25 years. This usually requires a co-borrower with an appropriate FICO score. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a parent of the student, but it's usually the student as the borrower and a parent as a co-borrower or guardian or whoever can qualify. Now, private student loans do have that option to defer payments while the student is in school, or you can make interest-only payments or make the full payment while the student is in school. Remember, if you have a security freeze on your credit file, make sure to lift it before applying for this because it does make it a little bit more cumbersome to get through the paperwork. Now, your credit union offers a student loan solution. They offer what we call a line of credit structure. So you only have to apply once during the 4 years that your student is attending. So it makes it really convenient. And you can borrow up to $75,000 on that line. However, this is only eligible for students that are attending 4-year schools that are not for profit, meaning Title IV eligible, meaning that they're eligible for financial aid. Rates can be as low as 7%, and it is a variable rate. I made a mistake on this slide. I apologize. The co-borrow maximum is not 50,000. I'll have to change that. So I think more to come on that. I believe it might be 75, but I'll have to double check on that. And I will make sure I correct it so that you have the appropriate slide. But they do offer a 20 or 25-year term with that variable rate. So if your student graduates with a $40,000 or less loan, the term would be 20 years, or anything over 40,000 would be 25 years. Okay, and again, they do offer full deferment, but they also offer a possible co-borrower release option after 48 months of consecutive on-time payments. So when you're looking at the PLUS loan and the private student loan, remember the PLUS loan is 10 years no matter what. This, you could be released after 4 years of on-time payments shown to be made by the student. There's also what we call a graduated repayment option available on these loans, and it's only offered once. And I would not recommend taking it unless you're trying to protect your credit in some way. If you have a good paying job, I would say no to this, because what happens is it takes that 20 or that 25-year term, and only for 2 years, it will extend that term out 40 years to make the payments smaller, but you're paying interest on that, right? And after 2 years' time, the amortization schedule reverts back to either 18 or 23-year term. So keep that in mind. There's been a lot that you had to take in this last hour. I know it is a lot, but if you ever need help, we have free assistance available through your credit union. So if you go to Mass Mutual, fcu.studentchoice.org/support/counselor, you get assistance with everything that I've talked about here today, free. So you can either ask a question to our rep, or you can schedule an appointment to talk with her. It is not a commercial. We will not sell you anything. We're just helping you trying to navigate this process with all these questions. And at this time, I thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions, I'll open it up right now. Okay, I do have one question. On my daughter's letter, it didn't show any Parent Plus loans as an option. The only thing on it was her merit award and the loan that she can take out in her name. Where can she find the other loan types that she can take out to pay? Very good question. You can go to your credit union, of course, and there are other options out there, but your credit union really can help you with that $75,000 line of credit. So just know that private student loans can be received by credit unions, banks, or fintech companies. I would suggest, I am a strong supporter of credit unions. I have credit unions in my blood. They're looking out for you, so I would always recommend a credit union first. Okay, I don't see anything else, so I thank you for your time, and I hope this was helpful. I hope you have a good day too. Take care.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. You'll be receiving an email follow-up with a survey on how the webinar was, a link to the recording, and the slides as well. So thank you, everybody.